Welcome to the Tick Talk Podcast. The clock is always ticking, so let's synchronize our watches and dive in. I'm your host, Callie Brigham, and I'm here to help you make time for what matters. Hey friends, we're going to do something a little bit different today. Are you with me? You ready for a little field trip, so to speak? So, a couple of weeks ago, I had the privilege of going to Dallas, Texas. And once a year, we have a conference for the company that I am with. And my team had the honor and privilege of being the number 2 sales team there at the entire conference for women all across the country. It was pretty special. It was really special. And one of the perks of that, well, I guess it really kind of depends on what you like to do as far as public speaking goes. But in my opinion, one of the perks of that was getting to share from a stage whatever I felt like for about 15 minutes. So I could share a little bit about my story, I could share some encouragement. It was really up to me what I felt led to do. And what's interesting is because this is my podcast, I'm going to tell you a little behind the scenes stuff. I really struggled with what to say. And part of that was a big part of my year this year has been the podcast and the extras and the other things that I'm doing that, yes, they relate to my business that I do full time otherwise. But at the same time, I wanted to be able to give a message that could speak to the women there in the company and also was honoring and authentic to who I am today. So I just really sat there stumped. I had writer's block. I was not feeling motivated. I was also, this is probably another topic for another day. I was also on day 7 of a 10-day cleanse where I was only drinking raw juice that my dad would make for me every morning, raw apple juice or beet and carrot juice, and eating raw vegetables twice a day. Yeah, that's all I was doing. So I had 0 brain cells left. And that Sunday afternoon, I had to submit my speech so it could get on the teleprompter and stuff. I called my dad and I said, I cannot do this anymore. I was going to do 10 days. And he said, I think you need a carb. So he toasted some Ezekiel bread for me and I ran over. And then I was like, okay, I think I have a brain cell. But I talked to my mom, and many of you know her. She was a guest on this podcast. She was definitely a highlight guest. And I said, you know what? And just for the record, it was episode 41, if you want to go back and listen. And I said, I just can't think of what to say. And this was her advice to me. She said, I want you to think about how do you want people to feel after they listen and what do you want them to do? And it was like, I'm going to snap my fingers. It was like that. I knew immediately what I wanted to say. I sat down at the laptop and the thoughts just flowed. And I'm going to share this speech with you on today's podcast. Now, I've edited out just a little bit that is just not as applicable to my podcast audience, but I've kept most all of it as the original speech. And so some of you were in Dallas. I know you were. And actually, that's probably the reason I'm sharing it today was I was encouraged by many of you to share this. And some of you were not. Some of you don't even know what company I'm with. You'll hear it in the beginning. So that's all good. You may have guessed that by now, but it's not a secret, by the way. And this might be a whole new side of wherever you are in life. And lastly, you're probably going to hear some common threads of previous podcast episodes. So you're going to say, yeah, that sounds familiar, or that's something that Callie likes to talk about. So with all that being said, with a pretty hefty introduction, here we go. This is my speech at our annual conference. And just imagine that I'm on a stage. I've had my hair and makeup done professionally, and I'm in a cute suit and some painful heels, and I'm ready to just share my story. So, okay, take a deep breath. Here it is. So, if you were a child of the 80s, you probably remember Nancy Reagan teaching us 3 important words. And if you know them, you can say them out loud with me. She taught us to just say no. That's right. Well, not to take anything away from our former first lady, but what I want to teach you are 3 words that are just as important and maybe even more important. Actually, they are more important. By the way, in my speech, I'm going to add in my own little things that I want to today, okay? Because this is not on the teleprompter and I do not have a clock that's ticking down for me to have to stop. So here are the 3 words, by the way. They are just say yes. Now, I want you to imagine that you have a journal in front of you. And by the way, you guys have been asking me, there is something coming. I promise, I promise, I promise. But you have a blank journal, except for it has your name on the front. It's the journal of your you get to open it up, blank page. That first blank page. You have a choice to yes or no your life. I'm done. Make that decision. Because what I know is it does not matter what the other pages have said. So if you had to flip through a bunch and they were looked messy and just a disaster, it's okay. It doesn't matter even where you thought the story was going. What does matter is that you get to decide and take action and write one small word that can and will, I believe, make a world of difference. So I was 14 years old when my mom opened a new page in the journal of her life and she wrote a huge yes. So she said yes. And again, if you listen to her podcast, you'd know she said yes to the Mary Kay opportunity. And it forever changed her life and mine. Probably heard her talking about being a hippie, and you may know that she had one tube of lipstick. By the way, she owned one tube of lipstick. It was called Garnet Frost. And if you know her coloring, you're probably like, "Ooh, I don't know that that was the best." To being at the very, very top of the company before she retired in, let's see, 2019. And I had a front row seat to all of this. I saw her write yes to believing in herself and yes, not just starting this business, but really for giving it all she had. And she had a lot to learn and she was willing to do it. So, what I learned from her, so when my mom, by the way, again, this is a little aside from me, when she said, "What do you want people to feel and what do you want them to do?" I thought, well, I want people to feel and do what I learned from her. And so what I learned from her, among, of course, many, many other things, is that there are 3 essentials to writing yes. The first is, and you heard this way back towards the beginning of this podcast, a journey with me. But the first is that when you say yes, you also say no. It is a two-way street. And the best way I describe it is you've probably heard this term too from me is juggling versus cradling. So imagine if I were a juggler and it would not be good. So those of you that imagine me as a good juggler, thank you. But no, not the case. Trust me. I have tried, by the way. It's bad. So, for many of us, though, that is what our lives feel like. So many balls all needing equal attention at the same time. And just when you finally get a rhythm, somebody tosses in that flaming sword, right? Ah, how does it feel? I know how it feels. It feels stressful and it feels frantic and it feels overwhelming and chaotic and never ending. Anybody out there feel like that's what your life feels like? Okay. Now, imagine the last time you cradled a newborn. My niece Shelby just had her second baby boy, Micah. My nephew and his new wife, they are expecting their first baby girl. Cannot wait. All these babies in our families. And how does it feel? It feels peaceful and stable and calm and you're connected. And when you picture it, you only have so room for so much, right? You simply can't and won't take on anything else. That's what life can look like when you realize that your yes means no to other things. I know this is a time podcast, right? So let's relate it to that. When I first started my business, also with Mary Kay, I really had to learn this. So this was many, many, many years ago. And I was working 60, 70, 80 hours a week as a television news producer for the NBC affiliate in Memphis. And I knew something had to give. And I wish I had time to tell you the story today, but I begrudgingly thought I would give Mary Kay a try. And that is an understatement. So someday I'll tell that story. But it was right at in Dallas, as a matter of fact, that I went as a brand new consultant, that I opened up that page and I wrote a very, very, very shaky yes. Definitely not in permanent ink at the time. It would have been in pencil. I thought maybe I'll erase it. But when I said yes, what I was also saying no to, that I didn't realize, but I was saying no to the negativity. at the TV station, and it was a lot. I said no to the doubts that came in my mind. I said no to my comfort zone. I said no to a traditional schedule and mindset. I said no to what other people thought was success. I said no to relationships that weren't my best. I said no to some free time. I said no to my own ego and pride. Ugh. And I said no to anything outside of my faith, my man, and my new business. And of course, what I'm expressing to you is that that no was actually yes. And yes to, I quit my job 6 months later. I really did. I left the negativity, and that was that. I said yes to earning a lot of Mary Kay career cars. I think I think 13, pretty sure that's right, and I think 11 of them have been pink Cadillacs. I said yes to lots of quality time with that guy, that man of mine that I had no time for when I was at the TV station. I said yes to then supporting him when he started his own business. That was really exciting. He kind of was just inspired, like, well, if you can do it, I can do it. And he started off with his own design firm after quitting his job at an advertising agency. So he worked from home. It was super cool. We both said yes to focusing on starting a family after experiencing miscarriages and infertility and all the things that are, again, another story for another day. So lots of yeses came from that. And then eventually, mm, yes to actually cradling, physically cradling. And I'll never forget crying over our first miracle baby. He was a preemie, and this was Brayden, 6 weeks old. And I knew that that was the day that I would have had to go back to work at the TV station because I would have had 6 weeks off. And I was sitting there and I was literally cradling him, thinking about the yeses and the nos, right? They both add up. Which column is it going to be? And eventually, we would purchase our first home 5 doors down from my parents. So we moved from Tennessee down to Florida. Lots and lots of yeses. Yes to our second miracle, our second baby, and that was our Maddie girl. And as I'm recording this, they've just started their first day of 8th and 10th grade. Woo! Right. And it really also meant continuing to say no to things that were not my priorities. And these kids do get to go to the school of our choice because of that. It means yes to every single one of Brayden's soccer games. I added them up, 59 of them, 59 soccer games this past season. Who's counting? Me. And it meant that Brayden knew his mama was going to be there, videoing every single one of his saves as a goalkeeper. And he also plays on the field, so some of his actual goals too. I was there. And you know what? He knows I am there. He knows he can glance over to the sidelines and I'm watching. He can count on me. And I video not just his, but I video the other kids too, especially if I know their parents aren't able to be there. That is what my commitment is to my yeses in my schedule. And yes to my Maddie living her best life, taking her to meet up with her friends. Oh, she's got plans, y'all. She's got plans. Supporting her entrepreneurial endeavors, and she's got many of them. Yes to late night French braiding sessions. That's when we kind of have some of our best conversations. Yes to helping her navigate and becoming a rock star through being a teenage girl. She said to me the other day, you guys, she said, "Mom, I'm going to give you some grace." And I said, "You are? I'll take it." And she said, "This is your first time being the mom of a teenage girl, and it's my first time being a teenage girl at the same time." So I said, "You know what? Yeah, we'll give each other grace, right?" That's who I get to say yes to because I say no to a lot of things. And I said yes to a very busy summer. And you may have noticed I said no to 2 podcasts. And this is, again, going off script, but I said no to 2 podcast episodes a week over the summer because I do have a now 8th and 10th grader. And I know that I'll have many, many more summers with them, but only a few more summers that are going to look like this. This is the last summer that my 15-year-old won't be driving by himself. So there were some no's that I said, so I could say a lot of yeses. So we could have a really full summer where I could really do my best to be present for my kids and grow my businesses at the same time. One fun yes, of course, was making sure that our family was at my grandma Deedle's 100th birthday celebration, complete with a signature cocktail. And I know you guys love you some Grandma Deedle. Go back and listen to episode 21. In that, she was 99 years young. Now she is 100 years young. So cool, right? And yes, as well to my Mary Kay business. And I gather with my team virtually at least 4 times a week. I've watched leaders emerge from that. I've watched so many great, beautiful things happen through that has been enhanced with being able to say yes to that and no to some other things too, right? So, anyways, I just want you to think today, what will you say no to so you can say yes? A no for now, and that's the other thing. It doesn't have to be no forever, but a no for now can pay off for more yeses than you can imagine. Okay, the second lesson. Yes means your best yes, not somebody else's. And while we were there in Dallas, we were right smack in the middle of the Olympics. I am an Olympic junkie. I made sure no matter what, I was tracking with what was going on in the Olympics. And so imagine with me if Simone Biles, the most decorated gymnast of all time, were to say, yeah, but I can't do the backstroke or the freestyle. We would laugh at her. We would say, you were not created to be a swimmer. I mean, look at you. You were created to be a gymnast, right? Her body structure, her talents, her abilities. She's a gymnast, period. Okay. What if we looked at Katie Ledecky, the most decorated female swimmer? What if she said, well, I fall off a balance beam or I can't do a cartwheel? We would laugh at her too. I would say, you're supposed to be a swimmer. Both of them are Olympic athletes and like the best Olympic athletes, but they are not the same and they're not supposed to be. And guess what? Same with you. You can be a champion in your arena and your world, but you do not need to be the same. And you're not supposed to be the same. Mary Kay Ash said, God didn't have time to make a nobody, only a somebody. So, how silly to think that you have to be like her. I say that in quotes, her, or do the things the way that she does them, or be her age or her stage or her personality or have her talents or her calling. If you are able, I want you to take out your pen or your stylus, depending on if you're a paper person or not. And I want you to write the word yes with your non-dominant hand. So if you're right-handed like me, you would write it with your left hand. Okay, go ahead. Just real quick. How's it feel? Awkward, messy, slow, ugly, hard. Okay, now just pop it over to your dominant hand. I mean, you don't even have to think about it, right? It is easy and quick and effortless. And that's what your yes should be. Doing your thing in your strengths, going for your goal, reaching for your dream, and nobody else's. So, in this day and stage for me, and in this season, this means that I work during the day, especially now that my kids are back in school. I work during the day till the moment my kids walk in the door from school. At that moment, I make sure my phone is turned off. Like, I don't have anything going on. I look them in the eyes. They're teenagers, so after about a couple minutes, they're good and they want to go chill. All right. And I honor that too. Okay? So that's what that looks like, but I make sure that that happens. I then on Fridays, I literally, you probably know this, unplug my router from my computer after my last Zoom ends at noon and I don't plug it back in until Monday morning. I took the Gallup Strengths Finders test. We need to talk about that on a podcast episode to see what my top strengths are. And I work every day at those things. And I try to rock the world with those things. And I don't even pay attention to what's not in my top strengths. I actually looked one time to see my very bottom ones just so that I could laugh and be like, yeah, don't have those. That's okay. It's all right. But it means I'm perfectly great with being an outgoing introvert, that I do wake up early. You might need to sleep in. That's okay. Or whatever books that I happen to read or podcasts that I listen to love to. I just want to remind you that the calling on my life, your life, was not a conference call. It was a one-on-one call. Me and God, you and God. And the same thing goes for you. Okay. Lastly, your yes can be a yes for someone else too. So, you may have heard the story of the elderly carpenter who is ready to retire. He told his employer of his plans to leave the house building business. The employer was sorry to see his good worker go and asked if he could build just one more house as a personal favor. The carpenter said yes, but in time, it was easy to see that his heart was not in his work. He resorted to shoddy workmanship and used inferior materials. Well, when the carpenter finished his work and the builder came to inspect the house, this employer handed the front door key to the carpenter. This is your house, he said. This is my gift to you. What a shock And what a shame. If he had only known he was building his own house, he would have done it so differently. Now he and his family had to live in the home he had not built well. So it is with us. We build our lives in a distracted way. Maybe we react rather than act. We're willing to put up with less than the best. At important points, we don't give the job our best effort. Then, with a shock, we look around at the situation we've created and find we are now living in the house we've built. And if we had realized that, we would have done it differently. So I want you to think of yourself as the carpenter and think about your house. Each day you hammer a nail or you place a board. I want you to build wisely. Your life tomorrow will be the result of your attitudes and the choices that you make today. And I want to add on to that story because I said my third point is you're not only building your house, but you could be building someone else's too without even realizing it. So many years ago, my mom went to work on building her dream home on beautiful Pensacola Beach, Florida. And she was not like that carpenter. She did do everything to her best and she did choose excellence in all the little details. Well, she and my dad would go on to sell that house. And years later, we got to have episode on this too, in the most divine twist of fate, my husband Josh and I would buy that home for our little family. Our kids were 2 and 3 at the time. And I'm actually recording the podcast right here in that house. The thing was, my mom didn't know she was building my house. I'm her only child. Her son in love lives here. And let's be clear, most importantly, her 2 precious grandchildren and her precious granddog too. And she was building it for us to live in. So what if she had been like that carpenter? What regrets she would have had, but she didn't have any because that's when yes turns into a legacy. So, what can even feel selfish sometimes by saying yes to yourself, or maybe it seems insignificant, it can have generational impact. Someone is waiting and needing for you to say yes so they can too. And yes does mean work. So, it's not just enough to decide today. You may have probably heard the story of the 5 frogs on the log. 4 decided to jump off. How many were left? No, not 1. It was still 5. Deciding is one thing, doing is another. All right, so here's how we're going to end this episode today. I want you to turn to a fresh sheet of paper or swipe to a new screen, or you can pause it. I want you to take a moment. If you pause it, by the way, will you go and review the show on Apple Podcasts? Give us a 5-star review. How do you like that? All right, here, let's get serious again. But you have a choice. You can write the word no, or you can write the word yes. And I'm going to share with you a poem. It's an original poem, so you can't search Google for it, but it's an original poem. And I urge you to decide today and then write it down. You can even write down all the yeses you're believing for and dreaming of and willing to work for and feeling called to. And you guys know I've been calling this my and era recently, but I think I might just change it to my yes era. So here we go. Say yes to the dawn, to the new day's light. Yes to the dreams that take flight in the night. Yes to the moments that challenge. Yes to the courage that never finds rest. Yes to the whispers and hopes yet to be. Yes to the visions that only you see. Yes to the journey, the steps bold and true. Yes to the path that's uniquely for you. Say yes to the laughter that echoes around. Yes to the joy and the love you have found. Yes to the tears that water your soul. Yes to the growth that makes you whole. Say yes to the stories that yearn to be told. Yes to the heart that dares to be bold. Yes to the lives that your light will inspire. Yes to the dreams that set you on fire. Say yes to the future, unknown though it seems. Yes to the power of chasing your dreams. Yes to the moments, both quiet and loud. Yes to your spirit, unbroken and proud. Say yes to the challenges. Yes to the strife. Yes to the beautiful journey of life. Yes to the impact, the difference you'll make. Yes to the hearts that your courage will wake. Say yes to the call of your heart. Yes to the dreams that set you apart. Yes to the power that lies in your hands. Yes to the future. Yes to your plans. Say yes and watch as the world comes alive. Yes to your purpose, your reason to strive. Yes to the dreams that are yours to possess. Yes to the magic of simply saying yes. Thank you, friends, for coming to my TED Talk. No, thank you for coming to the place of yes, honestly. And I pray that this encourages you. I pray that it motivates you, it changes you. And at the end of the day, I pray that you receive it for how you feel about it and that you receive it on what you're going to do. So, obviously, the answer today is to just say yes. Thank you for joining me on the TikTok podcast. Please subscribe, rate, and leave a 5-star review. Your feedback fuels our mission to help you master your time. Set your alarm for our next episode, and until then, make every moment count.